Hey, hi guys. In this session, we'll understand the concept of finally block, where we'll see the definition of finally block and we'll see where we can use and why we use the finally block. So now see the definition of finally block I have written here. So finally block will always be executed whether the exception has been handled or not. It doesn't matter your exception is been handled or not, but the finally block code will always be executed. This finally block we can use with try or try catch block. So this is a syntax of finally block. So here I have used this finally block along with this try and catch block. So how we can use? First, we'll write this try block. Under this try block, we will keep the risky code and then we'll use the catch block. Under the catch block, we'll handle the code exceptionally. So in an alternate way, we handle the program, we handle the exception under this catch block. After that, we can use the finally block. So under the finally block, we can write some statement or we can write the cleanup code. I will explain you what is the cleanup code. So under this finally block, we can keep the statement or we can write the cleanup code. So this is the syntax of finally block along with this try and catch block. Now we can see along with this try block. So finally block we can use with try block as well. So we'll write the try block, risky code we will keep inside the try block. After that, we can use the finally block. And under the finally block, we again can keep the statement and that cleanup code. But I would suggest you to use this one along with this try and catch block, because if it will throw an exception, if your code will throw an exception, then it will go inside the catch block and catch block will handle the exception, and after that your remaining code will be executed. If you don't use the catch block and your code is throwing an exception, then your remaining code will not be executed. JVM will terminate the program abnormally. So now let me write one simple program where I can show you the concept of finally block. So I will create one class with the name of finally demo, finally block demo. We'll write a main method and simple I will use a try block. Under the try block we can use the risky code. So I will take 3 variable here. Let's say A is equal to 100, B is equal to 2, and I will take one more variable, that is C. Now I will divide two numbers. C is equal to A divided by B. And then we'll print the number of C. Now try we already have used. Now I will use the catch block. Under the catch block, we write the code to handle the exception. Since here we are dividing these two numbers, so it can occur arithmetic exception. So I will write here arithmetic exception. So this is the arithmetic exception. So here we can print some message here. You can use this system.out.println e else you can use this e dot print stack trace, this method. So if you are using this method, then you can remove this. So it will give you three things: exception name, description, and stack trace. Means line number of code where exception is occurring. So we have used try and catch block. Now we'll use finally block. Under the finally block, you can print some statement. So as of now, I am printing some statement, but basically it is used for the clean up the code. But as of now, I am printing some message here. So let's say I'm writing, this is a finally block. I will run this program. So as of now, we are not going to get any exception since we are dividing the number 100 by 2. So it will return 50, right? So as of now, it is not going to throw an exception. So if it will not throw an exception, so it will go inside the try block. After try block, it will move into the finally block. If your code will throw an exception, then what it will happen, it will go inside. If it is throwing an exception, then it will move into the catch block and it will throw an exception and then it will move into the finally block. So I will run this program. See, so first it is going inside the try block and it is trying to divide the number 100 by 2 and it is getting the result 50. After that, it is not going inside this catch block. After executing these line of code, it is moving inside the finally block. We have run the successfully code. Now, if I'll put the 0 here instead of 2, and now if I'll run the program, then it will throw an exception. Because if any number you will divide by 0, then it will throw an exception. So as of now, what it will happen? It will go inside the code. It will throw an exception. Once it will throw, it will not be able to handle here under this try block. Then what it will happen? It will go inside the catch block. It will give you the details of exception and then it will execute the finally block. So let me run this program. See, now what happening here? It is not giving the number anything, right? Because it was trying to divide these two numbers, but it was not able to divide. So what happened? It has moved into the catch block and after that it has given the description why it is throwing an exception, what kind of exception it is throwing. So it is throwing arithmetic exception. Detailed description it is showing why it is throwing an exception means we are dividing a number by 0. So that's why it has thrown the exception. And it is saying the line number of code where exception is occurring. In the class finally block demo, finally block demo is a class. In this class, line number 8 exception is occurring. Line number 8 exception is occurring. So this is how we can use finally block along with this try and catch block. So, so we are saying this finally block will always be executed whether the exception is being handled or not. It doesn't matter, but finally block code will always be executed, right? So now I will show you how we can use along with this try block. Now I will remove this catch block. So far we have seen the syntax. So far we have seen this syntax. We have used try and catch block and then we have used this finally block. Now we will understand this using with try block. So as of now, I am removing this catch block, right? And I will put some number here too. Now, so everything is correct now. Now it is not going to throw an exception, because if you divide the 100 value by any number, then it will not throw an exception. It will give some result, right? So it is not going to throw an exception. So what happened? It will give you the result of this C, and then it will move into the finally block. So let me run this program. See, it is returning 50, and then it is returning the statement of finally block. But if we put 0 instead of 2, then it will throw an exception. So now what happened? So if it is throwing an exception, so we are not using catch block. So JVM will throw an exception, but it will throw after executing the finally block. So first it will execute this finally block code, and after that will throw an exception and terminate the program. Abnormally, it will terminate the program. JVM will terminate the program abnormally. So let me run this program now and see the output. See, so this finally block is being executed first, and then it has thrown an exception. See, it is saying this is a finally block. First, this finally block code will be executed, and then it will throw an exception and will terminate the program. Now, if I want to print some message here, let me give some statement here. Hello, right? If I'll run this program again, see. So what happening here, it is, since it is throwing an exception and we have not used catch block, because catch block is used to handle the exception alternately. But here we are not using the catch block. So what it will happen, it will go inside the finally block, it will execute this program line number of code, and then it will throw an exception and will terminate the program. After that, whatever the code you have written here, it will not be executed. See, these line number of code will not be executed. If I'll use 2 here, then it will be executed. See, now it is executing, right? Hello, hi, and everything is being executed. But if I'll break this program, now see, so it doesn't matter your program is throwing an exception or not. In every case, in all the case, finally block code will be executed every time. It will always be executed, right? See, it is throwing an exception still. This finally block code is being executed. But the only thing, if you are not using the catch block, then your remaining code will not be executed. It will terminate the program. So if I'll run this program again, then see, this finally, in the case of throwing an exception, if it is throwing an exception, it is not been handled by try block, then catch block we have not written, then in this case, it will execute the finally block code and then throw an exception and will terminate the program. Remaining code will not be executed. So I would recommend you always use the finally block along with this try and catch block. So the use of try and catch block, if your program is throwing an exception, then catch block handle handle the exception by alternate way, and then will execute your finally block, and then it will execute your remaining code as well. So in this case, see, as of now it is throwing an exception, but if I'll use here catch block, right? Print stack trace. See, so as of now we have used this catch block. Now it is going to throw an exception, but once it will throw an exception, it will go inside the catch block, and catch block will handle this exception by alternate way, and then it will throw an exception, and after that this remaining code will be executed. So once you use this catch block, your remaining code will be executed. So that's why we use this catch block, so that our remaining code will be executed. If you don't use this catch block, then your remaining code will not be executed. The using of catch block, it doesn't mean your program got fixed. No. If this line number of code is throwing an exception and moving under the catch block, it means your program is not correct. You need to fix it, right? So here we are using the catch block so that if any exception is going to throw, then our remaining code should not be break and it should be executed, right? But this finally block will always be executed. It doesn't matter your code is going to run or going to throw an exception. It doesn't matter. But this finally block will always be executed. See the definition as well. It is saying finally block will always be executed whether the exception has been handled or not. It doesn't matter your exception has been handled or not. But this finally block is always be executed first. So I would recommend you to use this finally block along with this try and catch block. Right now, so far we have seen the definition and the syntax of finally block, and we have seen how we can use this finally block along with this try and try catch block. Now we'll see why we use finally block. What is the use of finally block? Why we are going to use in our framework this finally block? So basically we use this finally block to clean up the code. Let's suppose that I have written one program. Let me show you. See. So why we use this finally block? Because let's say you have written a code. You have written a code for application, right? But for that application, we need some data. So we can take the data from Excel sheet, or we can take the data from DB. So if you are taking a data from DB, then you will have to make some connection, DB connection under this try block, right? But if you are taking a data from Excel sheet, then again, you will have to write this line number of code, file input stream reader. By using the file input stream reader, you can read the data from Excel sheet, right? So here, what happening here? We are let's say we are opening the sheet, we have opened the sheet, and after opening, we are reading or writing the data, reading or writing, we are reading and writing the data, right? And after reading or writing the data, we are closing the sheet, right? But if we close here, so sometime what happen, it doesn't found the sheet. If it doesn't found the sheet, or maybe it found the sheet but data is not available in the sheet, then what happen, it will go inside the catch block and it will terminate the program. So once it will terminate the program, your sheet will be open, it will not be closed. So that is the reason what we are doing. See, so in this try block, if you close the file, but in case of exception, your file will not be closed, then it will go inside the catch block and it will terminate the program, but terminate or it will run the remaining code, but your file will be still open. So in this case, what we are doing here, this close file, right, we are keeping inside the finally block, inside the finally block, so that if any case your file is open in this try block and it doesn't get closed, then what will happen, it will go inside the file input stream reader. Let's say it will read and write the read and write the data inside the inside the excel sheet, and then come inside the catch block. If it doesn't found the sheet, or if it doesn't found the data, then it will come inside the catch block and it will print the statement, whatever the statement you have written here, it will print it, and then it will come under the finally block. If your file is not closed, then it will check this condition. If your file is not closed, then it will close the sheet first, and then if it is not closed, if your sheet is not closed, then it will close the sheet first, and then whatever the remaining code will be there, it will be executed. So if I run this program, see, it is saying file not found, because here we have given null and this is the random I have given the path. This is not a correct path. So file is not available at this path. So it doesn't found the this document here, txt file here. Then if it doesn't found here the sheet or the document, then it will come under the catch block. It will throw an exception, whatever the exception will occur, like file not found exception or null pointer exception or any kind of exception, what it is occurring, it will throw, and then it will go inside the finally block and it will close the opened file, and then it will execute the remaining code. So the reason why we are using this finally block, let's say you are making any connection to connect a database to get the data from database, right? So in case, if in any case your program is throwing an exception, then it will move into the catch block and it will throw an exception, and then it will go inside the catch block and it will close your DB connection. So that's why we are using this finally block to clean up the code. If any file or any DB connection is open and it is not still closed, then inside the finally block, it will close it. So under the finally block, we write a code to clean up the code. Let's say if any file is open, then it will close. If any exception occur while reading or writing a file, then below code will not be executed, and then resource will not be able to close the file. That's why we write this kind of code under the finally block, right? So this is why we use finally block in our program or in our framework. Now we will understand the difference between final, finally, and finalize. This is most important interview question. So here I already have written so that we don't waste our time in this session. See, so interviewer mostly ask what is the difference between final, finally, and finalize, and what it is they ask. So final we already have seen in the OOPS concept. Final is a keyword. First point is final is a keyword. Finally is a block, and finalize is a method. Second point, final keyword we can use with variable, method, and class. We have seen in the OOPS concept that final keyword, if you use along with the variable, then user cannot change the value of final variable. But if you use final keyword along with this method or any method, then user cannot override the final method. And if you are using final keyword along with the class, then user cannot inherit the final class. So this is the use of final keyword. Now in the finally we can use with either try block or we can use with try catch block. We have seen, right? Here in this syntax we have seen we can use either we can use along with try block or we can use try and catch block. But I would recommend to use along with try and catch block. Now finalize. Finalize method is an override for an object. So this finalize method we can override with any object in the Java. We can override with any object, and it will always be executed before the garbage collection. Basically it is used to clean up the code. In the same way, in the same finally in the finally we have used this finally block to clean up the code. In the same way, finalize method will always be executed before the garbage collection, and basically it is used to clean up the code. So what the meaning of this line? So in the before moving into the garbage collection, if any file or any like DB connection or any resource is still open, then this finalize method will close it first and then it will move into the garbage collection. So that's why we are saying finalize method is used to clean up the code. It means before moving into the garbage collection, it will clean up the code. Clean up the code meaning if any file is open or if any DB connection is open, then it will close it first. So it works to clean up the code. And after that, so this is the difference between final, finally, and finalize. And this is most important topic. Interviewer mostly ask what is the difference between final, finally, and finalize. So now we have completed the finally block as well in this session. In the next session, we'll understand through and throws keyword. So I hope you understand. If you have still any doubt, then you can ask me in the comment. I will try to make you understand. Thank you guys.